Most men believe rejection happens at the moment they ask. In reality, rejection is usually decided long before a single word is spoken. It's decided in the emotional environment you've created or failed to create up to that point. Intimacy is not a request that begins with language. It's a response to safety. And safety is not softness. Safety is emotional steadiness, clarity, and absence of pressure. A woman doesn't open herself physically because she was persuaded logically. She opens because her nervous system feels calm in your presence. That calm tells her, I can be myself here. I won't be rushed. I won't be trapped. And when that feeling exists, intimacy stops feeling risky. It starts feeling natural. Psychologically, the female mind is constantly scanning for emotional threat, not danger in a dramatic sense, but instability, neediness, urgency, hidden expectation. When a man is internally tense about intimacy, that tension leaks. Even if his words are polite, his energy says, I need this to go a certain way. And that need triggers resistance. Not because she's cruel, but because pressure kills desire. Emotional safety is created when you are grounded enough to be okay either way, when your tone doesn't change based on her reaction, when your mood isn't dependent on validation, when you can express interest without seeking reassurance. That emotional independence communicates strength, and strength creates safety. This is where many men confuse kindness with safety. Being agreeable, overly accommodating, or excessively careful does not create safety. It creates uncertainty. Safety comes from emotional consistency, from knowing that if she leans in, you won't overwhelm her, and if she pulls back, you won't collapse or retaliate. From a philosophical standpoint, intimacy is a surrender of control. No one surrenders in an environment where control feels fragile. A woman opens when she senses that you are already complete within yourself, that you are not using intimacy to fill a void, that you're sharing from fullness, not hunger. Notice how this shifts the entire dynamic. You're no longer trying to get intimacy. You're allowing space for it to arise. Conversations slow down. Eye contact lingers naturally. Silence becomes comfortable instead of awkward. These are not techniques. They are byproducts of emotional safety. This also explains why men who rush to escalate often face rejection even when attraction exists. The attraction was there, but the safety wasn't. Desire without safety feels dangerous, so the answer becomes no. Even if the feeling underneath was maybe or even yes, your role is not to eliminate risk for her, but to eliminate pressure. Risk is exciting. Pressure is suffocating. Emotional safety allows her to choose freely, and freedom is essential for genuine intimacy. What's powerful is that this safety is not something you perform for her. It's something you cultivate within yourself. When you regulate your emotions, respect your boundaries, and remain calm in uncertainty, the environment changes automatically. She feels it before she understands it. And once she feels safe, the question of rejection loses its weight, because intimacy no longer feels like a leap. It feels like a step. So if you want intimacy without rejection, stop focusing on the moment of asking. Focus on the man you are in the moments before it ever comes up. Because when a woman feels safe in your presence, she doesn't feel like she's giving something away. She feels like she's choosing something real. Once emotional safety is established, the next mistake most men make is trying to toast for intimacy in a logical, verbal way, as if attraction operates like a negotiation. It doesn't. Desire responds to direction, not explanation. This is where leadership enters the dynamic, not as dominance, but as calm decisiveness. Psychologically, attraction thrives in polarity. One person sets the emotional direction, the other responds to it. When a man asks in a tentative, uncertain way, "Is this okay? Do you want to?" he unintentionally places the burden of leadership on her. And when that happens, desire weakens. Not because consent is wrong, but because uncertainty dissolves polarity. Here is the distinction most people miss. Leadership does not mean forcing an outcome. It means moving with clarity while remaining unattached to the result. You express desire openly, but without chasing approval. You state interest without shrinking or overinvesting. That emotional posture communicates confidence, and confidence is deeply attractive. Philosophically, desire is not something you request, it's something you reveal. When you reveal desire cleanly, without apology or pressure, it gives the other person space to respond honestly. This honesty is where true intimacy lives. But when desire is wrapped in insecurity, it becomes manipulation, even if unintentionally. Notice how powerful men of presence communicate. Their words are simple, direct, unembellished. They don't explain why they want something. They state what they feel and allow silence to do the rest. Silence is not emptiness. It's trust in your own value. From a psychological perspective, over-explaining is often a defense mechanism. It's the mind trying to reduce risk by controlling perception. But attraction grows in uncertainty, not control. When you allow space after expressing desire, you allow her nervous system to catch up to the moment. That pause is often where desire deepens. This doesn't mean ignoring consent or boundaries. It means understanding that consent feels safest when it arises from clarity, not confusion. A woman feels more comfortable saying yes or no when she senses you can handle either outcome with emotional maturity, and this is where rejection loses its sting. When you lead without attachment, rejection is no longer a judgment of your worth. It's simply information. That emotional neutrality is felt immediately. It tells her this man knows who he is, and knowing who you are is the foundation of attraction. Another subtle but crucial point: leadership is not urgency. Urgency signals scarcity. Leadership signals abundance. When your energy is relaxed, unhurried, and grounded, intimacy feels like an option, not an obligation. That freedom is intoxicating. Think about it this way: attraction is less about what you do and more about what you withhold. You withhold neediness. You withhold self-doubt. You withhold the urge to secure an outcome. And in that restraint, desire has room to grow. This is why the most effective way to invite intimacy is not through clever words or timing tricks, but through emotional alignment. When your words, tone, body language, and inner state are congruent, she feels it immediately. There's no confusion, no mixed signals, just clarity, and clarity is rare. So instead of asking in a way that seeks reassurance, express in a way that reflects self-trust. Let your desire stand on its own without defense or justification, because when a man leads with calm certainty, intimacy stops being something he hopes for and becomes something she feels safe choosing. Once leadership and clarity are established, there's a deeper layer most men completely overlook: the power of emotional pacing. Attraction isn't destroyed by saying the wrong thing. It's usually destroyed by moving too fast internally, even if externally everything looks calm. A man can say all the right words and still create resistance if his inner tempo is rushed. Psychologically, desire grows in stages. Trust first, safety second, excitement third, intimacy last. When a man skips emotional steps, the nervous system senses it immediately. Even if she can't explain why, something feels off. Not dangerous, but pressured. And pressure, no matter how subtle, collapses attraction. Here's the truth most people don't like hearing. Wanting intimacy is natural, but needing it is visible. Need leaks through tone, eye contact, timing, and energy. You don't have to say it. She feels it. And when she feels it, her subconscious goes into evaluation mode instead of desire mode. Philosophically, this is about self-containment. A grounded man does not outsource his emotional regulation to someone else's response. He enjoys the interaction for what it is, not for what he hopes it will become. That enjoyment creates presence. Presence creates magnetism. Think of emotional pacing like music. If the rhythm is rushed, the song feels chaotic. If it's too slow, it feels lifeless. But when the timing is right, the listener leans in without realizing why. Intimacy works the same way. You let moments breathe. You allow silence. You don't fill gaps out of nervousness. This is where patience becomes seductive. Not passive patience, but confident patience. The kind that says, I'm fully here and I'm not in a hurry. That energy communicates abundance. It tells her you're choosing the moment, not chasing it. From a psychological standpoint, delayed gratification intensifies desire. The brain releases more dopamine when anticipation is allowed to build. When everything is rushed, there's no anticipation, only outcome seeking, and outcome seeking feels transactional, not intimate. Another critical aspect is emotional mirroring. When you pace yourself, you naturally synchronize with her emotional state instead of dragging her toward yours. This synchronization builds rapport at a subconscious level. She feels understood without you needing to explain anything. And notice this: men who struggle with rejection often rush because they're trying to reduce uncertainty. But uncertainty is not the enemy of attraction, it's the fuel. When you can sit calmly inside uncertainty, you demonstrate psychological strength. Strength, in this context, is emotional self-sufficiency. This doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means being warm without being consuming, engaged without being attached, expressive without being needy. That balance is rare, and rarity is attractive. You'll notice that when your pacing is right, she starts leaning in emotionally. She asks more questions. She invests more, not because you pushed, but because you made space. Space invites choice. Choice creates genuine desire. And here's the paradox: the less you try to get intimacy, the more intimacy becomes available. Intimacy is not taken, it's offered. Offered when she feels free, safe, and curious. Your pacing gives her all three. So slow your inner clock, let moments unfold. Let connection build naturally. Trust that attraction doesn't need to be forced, it needs to be allowed. Because when a man controls his pace, he controls his presence. And presence is what makes intimacy inevitable. At this stage, something subtle but decisive comes into play: the way you communicate desire without announcing it. Most men think intimacy is created through confession or escalation, through saying more, explaining more, or pushing the moment forward verbally. In reality, intimacy deepens when words become precise and energy becomes intentional. Psychologically, the human mind responds more strongly to implication than to declaration. When everything is stated outright, there's nothing left for the imagination to engage with. Desire thrives in interpretation. It grows when someone feels something before they fully understand it. This is why tone, timing, and restraint often matter more than the actual sentence being spoken. A man who understands this doesn't rush to label emotions or outcomes. He speaks clearly, but not excessively. He expresses interest, but without urgency. His communication feels grounded, not performative. And because it's grounded, it feels safe. Safety is not the opposite of attraction. It's the container that allows attraction to deepen without resistance. From a philosophy, Cal perspective, this is about alignment between intention and expression. When your words are trying to force a response, they create friction. When your words simply reflect your internal state, calm, self-assured, present, they create resonance. Resonance is felt, not analyzed. This is where many men misinterpret confidence. Confidence is not boldness alone, it's coherence. Your body language, your pacing, your eye contact, and your voice all tell the same story. There is no contradiction between what you want and how you're showing up. That consistency signals psychological integrity, and integrity builds trust quickly. Consider silence. Silence, when used intentionally, is one of the most powerful communicators of desire. It allows space for emotion to surface. It gives her room to step forward emotionally instead of being pulled. A man who can hold silence without discomfort demonstrates emotional control. Emotional control is deeply attractive because it suggests depth and stability. Another layer here is nonverbal leadership. You don't need to dominate the interaction, you need to anchor it. When you are relaxed, when you're not trying to impress or extract validation, the interaction naturally orients around you. She feels guided without being controlled. That balance, direction without pressure, is rare. On a deeper psychological level, this works because it preserves autonomy. Desire cannot exist where autonomy feels threatened. When a woman feels free to choose, her interest intensifies. When she feels cornered, even subtly, attraction collapses into defense. Your communication style determines which direction things move. This also requires emotional honesty without emotional exposure. There's a difference between being genuine and being raw prematurely. Genuine is grounded, raw is uncontained. When a man exposes too much too soon, it places an emotional burden on the other person. When he stays centered, his honesty feels inviting rather than overwhelming. And notice something important. When you communicate this way, rejection becomes less likely, not because you've manipulated the outcome, but because you've removed pressure from the interaction. You're no longer asking for something, you're allowing something to emerge. That shift changes everything. Over time, this approach trains you to trust yourself instead of the reaction you're hoping to receive. You stop measuring success by outcomes and start measuring it by alignment. And ironically, alignment produces better outcomes than chasing them ever could. This is not a trick, it's discipline. The discipline to speak from presence, not anxiety, to allow attraction to reveal itself instead of demanding proof of it, to let connection deepen naturally rather than forcing a climax. Because intimacy responds to clarity, not force. And when your words match your center, you don't need to ask for desire. It recognizes you on its own. There's another layer. Most men never address and. It's the one that quietly determines whether attraction grows or collapses, how you relate to outcomes. Not what you say, not how you look, but what you need from the interaction. Desire is extraordinarily sensitive to neediness, not the obvious kind, but the subtle psychological kind where your self-worth leans on her response. At a deeper level, attraction is a response to freedom. When a woman senses that you are choosing her rather than requiring her, something shifts internally. She doesn't feel evaluated or pressured to perform. She feels invited. An invitation is far more powerful than persuasion. Philosophically, this is about self-sovereignty. A man who is sovereign doesn't bargain with reality. He doesn't posture for approval. He acts from a place of inner sufficiency. That sufficiency creates polarity because it introduces contrast. When you are already whole, her interest becomes an addition, not a solution. Psychologically, this matters because humans unconsciously scan for emotional responsibility. When someone feels like they might become responsible for your emotional state, your happiness, your validation, your sense of worth, they instinctively pull back, even if they're attracted, even if they like you. Attraction cannot survive under emotional obligation. This is why detachment is often misunderstood. Detachment is not indifference. It's engagement without attachment. You are present, expressive, interested, but not gripping. You're not trying to lock the moment down. You're allowing it to breathe. When you embody this, your behavior becomes relaxed but deliberate. You don't rush conversations to conclusions. You don't over-explain intentions. You don't chase clarity prematurely. You let things reveal themselves in time. That patience signals confidence at a level words never could. There's also a subtle power shift that happens here. When you stop chasing outcomes, you stop negotiating your value. Your attention becomes something you offer, not something you spend recklessly. And attention, when it's scarce and grounded, becomes magnetic. This doesn't mean playing games or withholding authenticity. It means your authenticity is rooted in self-respect. You express interest because it's true, not because you're hoping it will earn something back. That distinction is felt immediately. From a psychological standpoint, this triggers curiosity. When someone can't easily categorize your intentions as dependent or desperate, the mind leans in. Curiosity fuels imagination. Imagination fuels desire. Desire grows strongest where certainty is balanced with mystery. Another important element here is boundaries, not rigid walls, but quiet standards. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't overextend to keep someone interested. You don't abandon your rhythm to sync with someone else's chaos. Those boundaries communicate that your life is already structured, already meaningful. And here's the paradox most men miss. The moment you stop trying to secure attraction, you become more attractive. Not because you've withdrawn, but because you've shifted from seeking to selecting. That shift is deeply felt, even if never consciously articulated. This also changes how rejection affects you. When you're outcome independent, rejection doesn't wound your identity. It simply informs your direction. That emotional resilience is rare, and rarity amplifies value. Over time, operating this way retrains your nervous system. You stop associating desire with anxiety. You stop equating connection with risk. You become calm in moments that once made you reactive. And calm presence is one of the most seductive forces there is, because calm suggests control. Control suggests strength. And strength, when it's quiet and grounded, creates safety without dulling attraction. So the question isn't whether she chooses you. The real question is whether you are showing up as someone who doesn't need to be chosen to know his worth. Because when you no longer chase desire, desire starts following you. At the final level, everything comes down to how you invite intimacy rather than attempt to extract it. Most men fail here not because they're disrespectful, but because they were unclear with themselves and therefore unclear with her. And confusion never creates desire. Clarity does. Psychologically, intimacy is not triggered by pressure. It's triggered by safety combined with tension. Safety comes from emotional honesty. Tension comes from grounded intent. When those two coexist, attraction doesn't feel forced, it feels inevitable. Here's the mistake most men make. They either hide their desire completely, hoping it will magically be discovered, or they announce it in a way that feels abrupt, needy, or transactional. Both approaches collapse attraction. One feels dishonest, the other feels demanding. The mature alternative is calibrated truth. You don't rush the moment, but you also don't betray yourself by pretending you don't want what you clearly want. You allow desire to be felt before it's verbalized. You let your presence, eye contact, pacing, and emotional steadiness do most of the speaking long before words ever arrive. From a philosophical standpoint, this is about congruence. When your internal state and external behavior align, people feel it instantly. There's no static, no mixed signals. Your intention is clean, and because it's clean, it doesn't need to be loud. This is where many men misunderstand confidence. Confidence isn't boldness. It's certainty without force. When you express intimacy from certainty, rejection doesn't threaten you, and paradoxically, that's what makes rejection less likely. Because she's not being asked to protect your ego, she's being invited into a shared experience. There's also a timing element that's deeply psychological. Intimacy should feel like the next natural step, not a sudden jump. When emotional rapport, trust, and mutual curiosity have been established, the invitation doesn't shock the nervous system, it settles into it. And when the moment comes, simplicity is power. No speeches, no justifications, no overframing. The more you explain, the more you reveal uncertainty. A grounded man doesn't convince. He states calmly, respectfully, without attachment. What makes this powerful is not the words themselves, but the emotional posture behind them. You are not asking to be chosen. You are offering connection. That distinction changes everything. If she says yes, it's mutual desire unfolding. If she hesitates, you remain centered. If she says no, you don't collapse. You contain the moment with dignity. That response alone often does more for attraction than the initial invitation, because it shows emotional mastery. It shows you don't need to win every moment to remain whole. There's a deeper truth here most people never articulate. Intimacy is not about getting access to someone else. It's about allowing yourself to be seen without self-betrayal. When you can do that, you stop chasing permission. You stop manipulating outcomes. You stop outsourcing your confidence. And when that happens, something subtle but profound shifts. Women no longer feel like they're being pulled into your world. They feel like they're being welcomed into it. That's the difference between desperation and desire, between strategy and presence, between hoping and leading. So don't ask yourself, how do I avoid rejection? Ask yourself, am I showing up as someone who can handle the truth, whatever it is? Because the man who can calmly express desire without fear of loss has already won. And when you act from that place, intimacy stops being something you chase and starts becoming something that meets you halfway.